Welcome to the Introspections podcast. So today we're going to have a conversation about entrepreneurship, but not the one that you usually hear. We're going to go the path of finding out what is it that people don't tell us, because they make the entrepreneurship life look so glamorous, but then there are things that happen behind the scene that a lot of people choose not to talk about, or they don't talk about anyway. And to help me with this discussion, I have Elijah Zgambo with me, an entrepreneur, and I also have Jo Pope, who is been in business for a while, and she's now doing coaching with young Zambian entrepreneurs. How are you guys doing today?
Great to be here.
Yeah, doing great. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just gonna get right into it because I know you guys will have a lot to add in on this. Elijah, tell me about your mindset before getting into entrepreneurship. Like, is it something that you felt you always wanted to do, or it's like, oh, like most Zambians, I don't have a job, so I need to find something to sell? How did you get into that space? Like, where was your mind at?
Yeah, I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I think also, if you look at the age at which I started, I think it was around like 17. It was really about my, interest in, skateboarding, hip hop dancing, and urban culture. I was really passionate about skateboarding. It was the thing that I loved to do the most. I started skateboarding in Russia, where it was a big thing, where my family lived. Then we moved back to Zambia in around 2005, and I met some friends who were also really passionate about skateboarding. And just in our little practice in the parking lot, we'd always talk about these big dreams we had about going to big international competition and competing amongst the best, just like any kid with a football who thinks they're Cristiano Ronaldo, or any kid with a basketball thinks they're Michael Jordan. It was just, that excitement. And, we realized that there was no skateboarding industry, in Zambia. So we wanted to make that. So it wasn't even about like, oh, I want to start a company and make money and do this, and this. It was more about like, I want to see myself in this, dream that I've always dreamed from the time I was a kid. And it was just like, oh, let's start a skateboarding competition. And it just so happened that the guy that I started with was a break dancer, and he's like, oh, let's make it like a skateboarding and a breakdancing competition. So it was just like really just a passion-led dream. And I think there is no standard story for what makes someone an entrepreneur. I think it's like, very personal to the individual.
I do want to talk about what that is exactly, entrepreneurship. I think that word is kind of thrown around a lot. But from your perspective, Jo, what were you thinking about getting into maybe like your early 20s in terms of your career, your mindset, before you went on to be in these various businesses that you're doing? Like, what was your mind at getting into that space? Were you thinking, okay, I need to be an entrepreneur, or were you just trying to navigate your professional career?
I was just trying to navigate the world. Nothing about professional career. So it was a very different time in the 1980s when I was in my 20s. And I was really unsure of what to do. I had no sort of career path ahead of me. I just sort of grabbed at opportunities. So I got into the restaurant business in London and very quickly became a restaurant manager. So I learned a lot about hospitality. And then I decided I need to do something more adventurous and less sort of in one building. So I fell into the film industry. I literally just met somebody in a pub and got a job. This is how I do most of my
jobs
life.
Are found in pubs.
Yeah. So I became a location manager in the film industry. I decided that wasn't me either. And then this job in Zambia fell into my lap. I mean, literally fell into my lap. And I thought, okay, well, I'm 29. I was 29 by this point. Let me get out to Zambia just for 6 months, sort of just take a break, do something really fun, and then I'll come back and decide what I need to be doing. And it was very unclear when I arrived in Zambia, and I knew within 2 weeks, this is me. I've never felt more me. It never occurred to me that I mean, entrepreneurship in those days was considered very differently. It never occurred to me that I would ever be labeled an entrepreneur. But I joined my husband's company. It had been running for a year, and I'm a very logistical, hardworking, dedicated, committed person. And so I just dived into this company and took on the accounts, took on the marketing, took on the PR, took on logistics, all sorts of things. And I learned on the job. And that's it. I just used my common sense. I had no skill sets. But having said that, I did zoology at university. I ran restaurants in London. I did logistics as a film location manager. So I had all the skill sets that I needed it all came together in the safari world, which was fantastic. Yeah. So when we were in the 80s, this word was never bandied about. And I remember that
the word entrepreneurship?
Yeah, entrepreneurship. Right? An entrepreneur was somebody who had a successful business.
Like they've already reached.
They reached it. You can't go to in my view, going to PACRA and registering a company name does not make you an entrepreneur. It's a successful business that is in growth and is steady and is sustainable, whatever that might look like. Then you can say, okay, I'm now an entrepreneur. But people are using that concept now as like it's a job description. I'm not going to go and get a job at a bank. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. It's not a job description. It's a process. It's an activity, but it's not a job description. And I think that's one of the mistakes that's happening across the world at the moment, but particularly in Africa, though, where there are so many youth and not enough jobs. Be a job creator, not a job seeker, is a bit of a mantra here. And I think it's really, in a funny way, I feel quite strongly it's unfair because there's such a level of expectation around being an entrepreneur, where actually it's just an incredible amount of very, very tough work and I mean, great if you make it and you're successful, and of course you're going to have a bunch of failures before you really become successful, and many people don't ever reach that point. But you're not an entrepreneur because you think you want to do something different and you go to PACRA and register a company. That does not make you an entrepreneur.
Yeah, even just in terms of that's one of the terms that people throw around, because entrepreneurship ideally has to do more around, you correct me if I'm not phrasing this the right way, has to do more around innovation, right? Value addition, and even exponential growth in a way. So if I grab a couple of sweets from a store and I resell them, what is that? Am I a small business owner? Am I an entrepreneur? How do you guys think about that? What differentiates maybe, let's say, a business owner versus an entrepreneur? Because both are working from their own perspective of trying to do something. How do you guys think about that?
I actually think entrepreneurship is like a spirit. There's the word and the dictionary definition, and the dictionary definition is just one who takes financial risk. It doesn't even talk about starting a business or starting a commercial business activity, although it's implied. But the way I grew up, entrepreneurship always represented this idea of an individual who would go out there and do something unconventional, something daring, something challenging. And there are always these images that would just, I think, flash in people's heads. And I mean, I guess it just really matters where you come from, but for me, it was always people like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs.
That's who you see as entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and it was just around people who would go and do something different, who would just challenge the convention. So for me, that's what entrepreneurship meant. I wouldn't look at the person who has the Kantemba in my neighborhood as an entrepreneur. But as I got older, I felt, for me, what that represented was a spirit, kind of like a dream. So for me, I think the definition of an entrepreneur went from the whole Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, doing something that wasn't common, to somebody who had a vision of, through business being more than what they were. And so for me, I think the definition of an entrepreneur really began to mean somebody who is starting somewhere, who's got a big vision, and they are excited about the process and doing the work to like realize that vision. It doesn't matter like who you are and where you're starting from or what even the initial idea is, but just the idea that you as an individual are going to take control of your destiny. You're gonna work very intentionally towards building something. I don't think the what you're building matters so much as just, you know, the ideas, the value, having the values of like, you know, being really open to learning, you know, thinking differently, and just really, you know, having a big vision that you're, you know, you're fully ready to work on. For me, that's what, even today, I would say like entrepreneurship.
Yes, for you.
Yeah.
And for you, Joe, when you think about the term entrepreneurship, what are some of the defining elements around that you need to say, okay, there's this, there's that, and this qualifies for entrepreneurship?
Well, I have to say, after listening to Elijah's definition, I am grabbing the title serial entrepreneur. Which I've always rejected.
Yeah.
I've always rejected. Yeah, because my work, my career, what it is I do has always been about, you know, breaking barriers, moving forward, sort of grabbing industries, making them work cooperatively, you know, all those things which are all entrepreneurial traits. But I also have a very practical side in my mind about what an entrepreneur in my mind is bringing all that vision and passion, or I think that's sometimes is slightly overstated, but yes, that passion, and moving it into a structure which we call business, which we call corporation, but a business, so that there's, you know, there's somebody who wants whatever it is that you're selling. There's a gap there in the marketplace, and you're filling that gap, but you're doing it in a structured and sustainable and growth focused way. And that, I mean, that's just running a good business.
Yeah.
And so I've always thought, oh, well, I know how to run a good business, but am I an entrepreneur? But I think when we marry those two together, I will claim the title after all.
Okay.
I am an entrepreneur.
Joe Pope, the serial entrepreneur. I forgot to add that on the intro. Another thing that it seems to be a common theme, right, is this was my thinking as well not too long ago. When people think about entrepreneurship, they tend to gravitate to, if it's not like need-based, like, oh, I'm living in a state I don't like, or I can't find a job, so I need to start a business, to, oh, I want to work for myself. In my experience as to where I'm at now in entrepreneurship, I think there is no such thing as working for yourself. You're either working for your customers. So when you think about it, like, entrepreneurship is not really about, oh, I need to work for myself. Maybe the freedom element is different, right? But there is no such thing as I work for myself. You're either working for investors. It's always a connected ecosystem. So I find that to be like a very false narrative, like one of the narratives that people push out there about entrepreneurship. How do you guys see that? Like, oh, I want to work for myself. Elijah, in your business, was there at any point where, like, you know what, today I can wake up and decide not to go for work? Like, so like how do you see that working for yourself as
I think that is actually a really funny, like, this misconception that people have. And that's outside looking in. If you are not in business, or if you are not like the principal of a company, you think that being an entrepreneur is like being the boss.
Yeah.
And really, I think when you are in that position, when you're starting a business or you have a business, you're thinking of yourself as in service to your customers, in service to the company and all of the employees, almost like working on a big puzzle, trying to, especially if you're first time, it's like a big puzzle. You're just trying to figure all of these things out. There isn't much of a sense of I am the boss. I can do whatever I want. I mean, unless you're extremely successful, and that's at a very mature stage where, you just do oversight. I don't think there's ever a sense of when you're in the business that, oh, I am the boss, I get to do whatever I want. For me, it was always, what are the challenges of the day? What do I have to figure out? What problems do I have to solve? How can I help the people in the company, do their jobs? How can I deliver for my customer the absolute best possible service? I never sold products. I was always in services. So that was always the mindset. Yeah.
How about you, Joe? I mean, you're doing life coaching now, so in a way you are working for yourself. But how do you think about that? Like, when people say, "Oh, I want to be an entrepreneur because I want to work for myself," like, do you think there's a correlation between? Because mostly I think what they have in mind is, I want to do whatever I want whenever I want. How can you tie those two back together? Like, for someone who's starting out and they're looking for some guidance.
Well, the word freedom is often attached to entrepreneur. It gives me freedom to do what I want, but actually you are so embroiled in that company, and you work harder than anybody in that company. You have so many balls that you need to be aware of and facilitate, and it's just such a big, being the person. And I would say, to be honest, the CEO role, a good CEO is pretty similar role, and as an entrepreneur you generally are the CEO. But it's a lot of work. So the concept of, well, I can go and play golf whenever I want to, and this and that and the other, particularly in the early days, is wrong. I mean, it takes a lot. Someone once said to me, to get a business up and running, but someone once said to me when I was involved in setting up another business, and they said, "Joe, at your age, really? It's like having a jumbo jet at the end of the runway, and you've got to put full throttle on, and you've got to go down that runway, and you just got to hope that you get enough lift to get this thing off the ground. What are you doing?" And I go, like, "Yo, what am I doing?" But again, this is a misconception that being an entrepreneur, I mean, I'm making the assumption that you're going to grow a company, that you're going to employ people. My experience of being a life coach is that I do have a lot of freedom, but I'm not trying to feed a family in life. I'm at the latter end of my career where I'm financially okay, so I don't need to be sort of worrying about it. I just do it for the love of it. But I think it's, again, underestimated that how much effort is needed to get a company off the ground and run a company and grow a company. And so, that sense, people think I'm going to have that freedom. Well, maybe 20 years down the line, but not till then.
Not right away, because actually the entrepreneur, the CEO, is usually like always on a time schedule. I need to have a meeting, I need to do, even when they're playing golf, it's probably structured. They're trying to network or something.
Whatever that people's idea of that is. I would even say, don't call yourself a CEO, because it's just it seems to me like a very glamorized concept. Because first of all, chief executive officer. To be a chief executive officer, there needs to be some kind of an executive team, which usually exists in a mature company. And then you are the person who is in charge of the executives, the C-suites, the chief marketing officer, the chief financial officer. I think, sometimes people get caught up in the idea of being a CEO and what that represents. And I think it's just like this whole thing about, I'm the boss. That I think that it's not important for you as a person who's starting a business to see yourself as a CEO, but almost in a sense like a student, because you're learning about what your customers want. You're learning how to build an enterprise. As the leader, and I'm trying not to use the word CEO, you there's a lot of things that you have to learn. And, that's could be like around managing money, managing people, having a product or service in the market, of which there are competitive products and services in the market, and understanding why customers are choosing what they're choosing. So, it's almost, I think the idea a lot of people have is you're this big boss, and
people just bend to your will.
But really the reality is you're like a student, where you have to kind of like humble yourself to the teachers, of which there are many. So I think that's really one of the this is, I would say, on topic, the things that people don't tell you about what being an entrepreneur is, you're really a student and you have to humble yourself and say, hey, there's a lot that I don't know, but if I learn it and I get it right, I could, have either a successful business in this business, or maybe this business will fail, and everything that I've learned from this experience, I can, channel into another business, somebody else's business that I join. Could be the next thing that I start.
And I really like that, and I think I'm going to add on to that, because I think a lot of people sort of very quickly, when they're sort of got, they've got some staff going, they've got some movement going in their business, it's beginning to build, then get into a very fixed mindset where I'm the leader, I have to be right.
Yeah.
I'm the leader, I have to know the answer to this.
Worse if you say I'm always right.
And then instead of the growth mindset, which is, well, I don't know, so let's all discuss that. And I think you're right, that the humility of being the student, it's a learning curve all the way. I mean, so many people get into entrepreneurship with very little concept of how to run administration, how to run accounts, marketing, PR, HR. I mean, there's all these different facets of running a business. And when you go into the sort of job market world, you fit into one of those categories and you learn administration or marketing or whatever. When you're the leader, when you're running your own business, when you have to know all those areas, you have to have an understanding, not know them to run them all yourself, but you have to have an understanding of all of them. So yes, it's a massive learning curve, and that, in my experience, continues all the way through. You don't get to the point when you say, all right, I understand all of this now, I've got all of this now. You're always learning. Because the marketplace, the customers, business environment is changing.
It's constantly evolving.
It's constantly evolving, yeah.
Technology
especially.
Technology is helping things evolve much faster. Yeah. I like the analogy you gave of a plane on a runway about to take off, and then you mentioned something so key for me, which is I don't know what to do and I'm trying my best to get it off the ground. I'd like us to dive deep into that, because anyone who's ever tried to set up a business that they intended to grow to a certain scale, it's a learning curve, like Elijah said, and there's a lot of not knowing, which means you have to be doing to figure out what you don't know. I'd like to dive deeper into the mindset that you need to have, because that also does take an emotional toll on you. Like you're trying to get this thing off the ground, and it's literally, you really have to give it everything you have for it to start to show any type of result. Let's talk a bit about the mindset when you're in that space. For someone who may be trying to start out and they're trying to figure out if it's for them, what would you tell them to be prepared for mentally, emotionally, the moments of uncertainty? How would you help them navigate that? Or if you were talking to the younger version of you, what would you tell them now with the experience you have at this moment?
You want to take a crack at it?
I'd like to hear Joe. Joe, I'll start with you.
Okay, so I think many young entrepreneurs, and this is really through my coaching experience, they have a vision of what it's going to be like for them. They have a vision of what they're going to do, and it doesn't pan out. I mean, generally, it doesn't pan out. Then you have to have the vulnerability, great word here, guys.
Vulnerability, yeah, Joe's favorite word.
Yeah, you have to have the vulnerability and the courage to be open about what is going on for you, and who you do that with or who you're vulnerable to. I would really recommend that somebody, as they move into the sort of setting up their own business, into the entrepreneurship field, is that they have set up a network of people or one or two really key people that they can be vulnerable with, they can be honest with. I really want to, and set it up. I really want to be able to come and discuss this with somebody or a few friends, but then also set up a mentor or a coach or somebody who you can be deeply honest with, because it can be very, very scary as you're in a field, in an area, in a position where you do feel like, I really don't know what's happening here. I really don't know what is the next best step. So to have people to discuss it with. What tends to happen is, as the control slips from your hands, you get further and further from how you think the world is seeing you to what is really going on inside you. And as that gap expands, it gets harder and harder to become vulnerable with somebody. It's harder to reach out. And then people generally get into the freeze mode or hide mode. And if that doesn't shift, generally the business is going to crash. It's not going to survive. So set it up beforehand. It's a bit like I'm an explorer. I'm going to go off and I'm going to explore this, new continent that no one's been on, and I need to have a base that I can connect to, so that people know where I'm at and how am I doing and do I need rescuing and where it's the same mindset. People didn't sort of just go off into the wilderness. They had support.
Okay, so before I go to Parker, I need to set up a kind of support system.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head. Is with honesty, you really need to be honest, and I feel the reason why that's so important is, in life there's a lot of uncertainty. In business, there is uncertainty that comes with serious financial consequences. First, you have to be honest with yourself in what you don't know. You can't learn and improve if you keep on lying to yourself that, you keep on telling yourself, such a great business person. I'm really good at business, I'm so great at so many things. You really have to be honest with yourself on what you don't know, so you know in what direction to improve. The worst lies you can tell are the ones you tell to yourself, because if you say, I'm perfect and I don't need any help, then when it comes to doing your accounts or your books, because you don't get the help that you need, because you haven't admitted that this is an area where I am weak and I need improvement, you can find yourself in a very bad financial situation if you don't admit that to yourself. So I think being honest is a really big part of it, and you have to be able to open up to people, Joe said, have people that you can say, hey, listen, I'm doing this business thing and I'm not so great at XYZ. I'm not so great at maybe I'm not good at having difficult conversations. I'm just such a nice guy. I don't want anybody to say that I'm a bad person, so I don't know how to have difficult conversations, and I think in honesty comes the ability to accept criticism, because as soon as I tell Joe I'm not good at accounts, or I'm not good at having difficult conversations, then she can give me her experience and her wisdom and her guidance, and it's going to involve criticizing the way I'm currently doing things. And I think being a lot of people put a lot of ego into the choices that they make and the activities they participate in, so it becomes very difficult to accept criticism, because nobody wants to be told, oh, you suck, or you're not great at this.
I would say change your mentor if they're
but you don't want to be
feedback.
You want to get constructive criticism, and you don't want to be defending yourself like, oh no, the reason why I'm doing this is because of this and this, and my grandma and my dog.
Like my dog got ran over.
So it's you have to be honest, you have to be willing to accept criticism. And I think this goes back to learning. For me, that's just one of the cornerstones of this, is that when you're honest with yourself, when you're ready to take criticism, you give yourself the ability to learn and grow in this new journey of uncertainty. And I think if I was giving advice to a younger version of myself, I think I would just say that no matter how bad it gets, just be honest, because you lose a lot when you're not honest with yourself and you're not honest with the people around you. Saying that, oh, I'm gonna pay you back, when you're not really able to pay someone back, could put somebody in a negative position and, damage your reputation or damage your credibility. It could just make people feel like you're not trustworthy. So I think, being honest, I would tell the younger version of myself, just be really honest, because if you're honest and things don't work out, people will want to work with you in the future. They'll still trust you. They'll still believe in you. So I think that would be like something I would tell any young person starting out.
Yeah, I just wanted to just add on to the growth mindset again. If there was one thing I would tell my younger self, it would be shift from fixed mindset to growth mindset, and that includes vulnerability and honesty. But I really discovered this sort of theory, this model of people who are fixed mindset and growth mindset. There's a wonderful book by Carol Dweck, and I read this book and I wept. I just thought, oh my God, I've done all this work with a fixed mindset. I have to be right. Don't you dare challenge me. I'm, do it my way or the highway. I mean, I had a very fixed mindset.
And that was your ego telling you that?
The need to be right.
They need to be right.
So
that's ego.
It's very, very big.
Could you tell us the difference? Like, what is the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset?
Well,
what does that mean?
A fixed mindset is, I already know, because I don't want anyone to challenge and expose that maybe I don't know. So I have to prove that I already know. Therefore I'm not open and curious. I am just defending my position the whole time. I don't have the vulnerability to be the person in the room who doesn't know or who gets it wrong. And I think one of the things, the need to be right, is a very clear indicator of I'm a fixed mindset. A growth mindset is you walk into a situation, a meeting, a room, and it's like, well, I know what I know, but I have no idea what I don't know. So let me be open and curious, and if things get difficult, fantastic. This is where I really learn. So I mean, everything we've been discussing, but the model is very clear, and I think I really recommend people you can Google it, and there's lots of images, because after she wrote the book, it became a huge thing. Where do I fit? And in some areas I very much fit in growth, and in some areas I very much fit in fixed. I was very much sort of growth in the sort of cutting edge of the business, but I was a leader who didn't like to be challenged. I thought I knew how to do it, so I didn't want to be challenged. It was very much fixed. So we aren't all one and the other. We have areas we're one and areas we're other, but we lean one way or the other way.
The other, okay.
And so I would have given that book, not that it was written, to my 20-year-old self.
My 20-year-old self would have not read any book that the current version of myself would have given.
Yeah, I know. And that's the problem.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I had a great ride, and we built a fantastic business, and lots of people benefited from that business, from the tourists to the community to all our staff. Fantastic. But I wish I had read that book.
You read that book, okay. Yeah. So we're going to take a short break, and then we can come and pick up from the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. Yeah. Sure. Okay, welcome back. So I wanted to dive in a bit. I like that analogy, like I said earlier, that you mentioned of the airplane trying to take off. So I related to that because when I met you, I was in a place where my business was really not going anywhere. But I was going through the motions every day, appearing at the office, and hoping by some miracle that, something's gonna come around and change, which is one of the things an entrepreneur usually has, that like nobody else sees it, but you have that faith. But to be honest, I didn't know what was next for my business. And looking back now, the right thing to have done would have been to shut it down and start to communicate to all involved partners to say, okay, this is where we are, and this is the plan to transition slowly from the bankruptcy. that was a very emotionally stressful period for me. And I remember I got so much from you, Joe, through the life coaching. That's how we met. For your business, Elijah, or your business experiences, let's talk a bit about the emotional struggles that go through. Because another thing about being an entrepreneur is usually you haven't just run one business, and one business will teach you about the other. Let's talk a bit about the emotional hurdles that you have to go through in managing yourself as an entrepreneur.
You know, when you think about like, oh, what are the emotional challenges of being an entrepreneur? I think a lot of people can think about only the negative, but like, you know, the roller coaster really can also be on the positive side, in that I remember, you know, getting to our first successes. It was such a relief to feel that, you know, you're right about something. You know, you had this idea, and in my case, it was the Street Culture Festival. You know, spend a lot of years building it, and then, you know, at some point we received a lot of financial success. You know, we're getting tens of thousands of dollars from sponsors, and that was like a really big emotional high of feeling, oh, I was right. Finally, everything is paying off. Nobody can tell me nothing. Like, clearly for me to have all this financial success, it means I know things you don't know. And, you know, of course, like, it feels good to, you know, succeed and to win, but there you have to be kind of like very cautious when you're successful, because you can go from, like, you know what we said, being really open and willing to learn, to like completely closing off, to thinking that you have arrived. So, you know, some of the big emotional lessons I think that I learned as a young entrepreneur was, I think I remember at some point being very successful and being humble, and I remember at some point being very successful and being arrogant. And I remember a time when the business wasn't making the money that it used to make. Like, I remember just the decisions I was making at a time, now looking back, that I feel were terrible decisions, is I never cut my salary when the business wasn't doing as well as it used to. I never thought about downsizing. You know, it's kind of like what you said, like, you know, there should have been a point where I should have had some more difficult conversations saying, hey guys, we're gonna need to let some people go, or we're gonna have to cut salaries, even just to have a chance at, you know, keeping the business afloat. And I think that was like a lot of emotion and ego. Like, my ego didn't want to let go of my salary, or my ego didn't want to let go of this really nice office that we had, and we painted at Bongo Hive. You know, it was just kind of just like I was really caught up in the rush of success, of wanting like more wins, more you know, moments of high achievement. And I think another interesting thing, on if we're talking about like the emotional journey, not just like the activities in the business, is that I remember at the beginning I was really open. I was like open to admitting that, oh, there's a lot of things I don't know. Let me go to Bongo Hive. I met Joe. I started speaking to Joe because I felt a lot of stress at the beginning of my journey. And I'm just like, I want to learn from her as an entrepreneur, how she dealt with these things. To that, like, I remember being very open a lot at the beginning, and then a lot later, once we had experienced some success, I remember feeling really close. Like, I can't tell people that I'm having a hard time.
Yeah, because you think they expect you to have the answer.
Yeah, and I felt like just always having to defend myself. Like, oh, people ask me, how are you doing? Things are always great. Like, yeah, just da-da-da-da. And not really being open and having the people around me that I could really talk to. I remember I had closed off from so many people I was open with. So I really feel like that was a huge part of my emotional journey, that when I needed emotional support, because of like maybe defending my ego or whatever, I had closed off. And that made it harder for me to tell people how I was really doing. And I feel like so many things that, you know, I could have like told people about, you know, maybe before it got to chaos, I could only tell them once it got to chaos and not preemptively before. So
Yeah.
I think that was like a, you know, if you have to ask about like the whole emotional journey that I went through, like it was a mix. There were some really high highs, there were some really low lows, and there was like some, obviously some between your highs and your lows, a struggle, and then there was like some struggling in the middle. And you know, I really wish, not really wish, actually, I wouldn't change anything. I think, you know, you kind of have to go through things to learn.
Yeah.
I really, you know, now as I move forward in my journey, I've learned to kind of always reach out to people when I feel like it's getting tough. You know, I also learned to reach out to people when things are great. Like, you know, you have to celebrate the successes. Like, you know, don't let the only time you express how you feel be at the extremes. You know, it's you know, you have to appreciate all aspects of the journey. Yeah.
And just aligning with what you just said, I think when my business was about to go bust, one of the worst questions to hear was, hey, I haven't seen you in a while, how's business? And you have to be like, yeah, it's going well. Oh, how many customers do you have? And then, you know, you have to like be political about how you answer it, because it could be a potential customer and you don't want to tell them like, no, things have hit the fan right now, like things are not okay.
I think you do need to know who to tell. And I think you do need to have kind of the right attitude about being authentic. Like if somebody, like, you know, if somebody asks you how's business going and it's not going great, you can say, oh, it's terrible, and laugh it off.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of more of like a freeing way of, you know, of not forcing yourself into like saying how you feel. I don't know if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah,
like you can be honest about how you feel, but it's just like about, are you going to judge yourself for it being tough? Yeah.
So like for you, Joe, speaking of businesses going down, and you've spoken a lot about vulnerability. What was it like for you at the time when you were going through your business downfall? Like, did you have emotional support, and what were the emotions that you'd find yourself navigating at the time?
Well, I what's coming to mind is I was involved in an airline, and a very fast-growing airline, and I was only a 25% shareholder. But suddenly, there I was, the CEO, and the other shareholders had kind of run, and I was left holding the baby. And it was a very, very difficult time. I mean, really very difficult year for me. And I didn't know what the situation was, because the accountant at the time was not able to give me the full picture, because he too was completely out of his depth. I was out of my depth. What did I know about running an airline? But he too was out of control, out of depth. So we didn't know the full financial picture, which really did not help at all, because it was just dark. And then I had a sort of a moral decision to make. I was aware around June, of course this is the safari season, and if I pull the plug now, I became aware that I don't think this is going to work. But if I pull the plug now, the safari season is going to be destroyed for everybody. It's going to be total chaos. So I kind of held it together until November, just bleeding money. And during that process, I was trying to find somebody I didn't know who to go to. I didn't know who to talk to. At a business level, I needed a consultant to say, no, pull the plug now, or no, you can do this, or do this, or do that. I didn't know who to see. I didn't know who to go to. So I tried a few people at a business level. At emotional level, I got into a very, very, very dark place, and I couldn't sleep. And so I'd spend my nights doing Sudoku, just trying to keep my mind still.
Did it help?
Yes, I'm a numbers person, so it's a whole language for me, and it's stepping into a different language. And I'd just lie awake in my bed doing Sudoku, and in the morning, you know, luckily I had a very supportive husband. So, you know, he helped me. I was still running Robin Pope Safaris with him, trying to deal with this airline crashing, which is not a good analogy, but it was.
I didn't think about that till you said it. But I want to probe you.
But from an emotional point of view, it was complete breakdown for me. Without my husband's support, I don't even know if I'd be here today. It was just the darkest, deepest pit possible. I tried to find people to talk to at a business level. From a personal level, it was the best thing that happened to me.
How did that situation resolve with the airline?
Oh, I closed the airline. I took the tourism business into another airline, which lasted 2 years, and then that went bust. But I could see that coming. I then took it into ProFlight, and I'm still a shareholder and still involved in ProFlight. So it all resolved, and tourism never got the hit that it would have done if I had pulled the plug.
You know,
I really like the way you say that. You're just like, okay, so close the airline, did this, re-strategized to focus on ProFlight. The way you say that is like very clinical. For a lot of people, they would just get so caught up on, oh, my business failed and da 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 da. But you talk about it as just like a bunch of very clear kind of steps.
Yeah, that's retrospect.
Yeah, I was about to say that. I was like, that's retrospect.
For anybody who's thinking about entrepreneurship, it's just worth realizing that you're gonna have these upsets. Sometimes you're gonna have to make the really difficult decisions where in the moment something's got to shut down, but it's not an end. It's just like it's like a step in the direction of moving from something that's not working to something that could work.
For me, there were two levels. The hardest thing was to find somebody. I mean, I didn't try that hard. I reached out to 2 people, frankly, but to find somebody who could help me in the process of winding down the company. I kind of by the time I knew this, I have to wind this down. And I had to make a decision. Do I declare bankruptcy? Because we were in massive debt.
Yeah.
I mean, airlines are not cheap. And in the end, I chose not to. I chose to pay off all the bills. It took me 7 years. And most of the money at the sale of Robin Pope Safaris, my share value, went into paying that off. A lot of that went to pay it off. But I did pay everybody off.
Okay.
And that felt really, really good. So in the end, I felt I could hold my head up high. But I didn't have support structure. And that's what we said earlier on. When you move into something it is a big deal setting up a business. It's a big deal. You really recommend that people develop support structure around them. That when things get tough, that they're able to be honest about it, because the worst is just hiding it and holding it inside, and then it just feels so much bigger than it actually is, because you're not expressing it. It's through conversation and sharing that we ease our pain. And our tendency, whether it's due to business or relationship or whatever, our tendency is to hold our pain and hide, and of course then you're just sitting with your pain. And it's so much better to find somebody to go and sort of let it out and look at it from a distance.
On a human level, why do you think it's so difficult for people to be vulnerable, like to allow ourselves to be vulnerable? Like from your experience and your coaching, like it might be more prevalent with entrepreneurs, but on a human level, do you find that it's not that easy to be vulnerable?
It's not more prevalent with entrepreneurs. No? I too still question this because of all the studying and work and everything that I have done. When I hit lows, which I still do, and I it feels like my scaffolding has completely collapsed. I mean, I'm functional. I go out and do my stuff. But inside, I just feel I'm totally incapable and incompetent, which is a dark place for me. And I don't reach out at that point. I reach out as I start emerging out of that really dark spot. And then I can start talking about it. But I've been through the worst by then. I have a lot of tools. I've done a lot of self-work. So the process is generally much shorter than it used to be. It's not months, it's now days or maybe a week or two, but it used to be a month problem. So but that's a lot of self-growth work. I still wonder why don't I reach out earlier, but I just don't.
So I want to throw one in there on this. I think it's that, and obviously this is from my personal experience, you're either living in fear or you're living in love. And I think that just when you're living in fear and you're afraid of people criticizing you, afraid of people judging you, or maybe you're afraid to admit to yourself that you're not whatever you thought you were, it makes it really hard to tell people how you feel when you're really focused on whatever that aspect of fear is. Fear can grip you. But if you're living in love, if you just love your life, love the people that are around you, and that things that you do, and I think if you just have a general love for your life, it's always been a little bit easier for me to kind of just express that, oh yeah, what I'm doing, it's not working out, it's actually going terrible, or what I'm doing is going great. And basically it's kind of you don't really care so much about what other people have to think and say about you. So because you as an individual are free, it's easier to put yourself out there. So, I think sometimes we can let fear hold us down. And, fear comes out in many forms. It could be, childhood traumas that are unresolved. It could be just things, you realizing certain things about yourself that you thought were true, and you're now starting to realize maybe are not true or not fully true. So yeah, I think anytime you feel you're really living in fear of something, it might be a good idea to question that, why is it that I'm living in so much fear? Who can I talk to? Yeah. And how can I resolve this deep thing that I have that I feel is really holding me back from making progress?
And of course, when there's massive financial consequences, which you mentioned earlier to what's happening, that is frightening. I mean, it does create a lot of fear when you realize there's going to be huge financial consequences to what's happening right now. But one of the things I say to myself, and I learned from that whole experience, is so simple: this too shall pass. Because here I am talking to you lovely guys. It passed. It felt like it never would at the time, and what is it now? It's 18 years later. Here I am. And yeah, this too shall pass, because life moves on. But if we go into complete freeze mode for a long time, it does not help you. That trying to keep some form of movement outward and reaching out to people, and learning not to get so attached to the emotion of the situation. The situation is the situation, and it's your role to try and resolve it, even if that means pulling the plug on the business. Freeze is kind of the worst place to be, because you're not doing anything about it. And the moment you actually start the process of the doing, you actually start, when you're pulling the plug on a business, the moment you start processing the wind down, you start feeling better, because you're no longer in that place of freeze. You're actually taking action, and action generates momentum.
And another reason why a lot of people seem to get into entrepreneurship is, I want to be successful, or I want to make X amount of money, I want to be rich, in a way that's kind of a pursuit of unrealistic. Because I find that in my experience, even when you do get there, you find that the journey was actually more important than getting to the goal. You derived more than when you get the money. So what would you say to someone who's reason to say, okay, why do you want to get into business? I want to be rich, I want to make X amount of money. Another thing I've seen is that, like Elijah said, he started street culture from a perspective of, I really enjoy doing this, right? People that start a business from the perspective of, I really enjoy doing this, and let me get together with other people that do, versus I'm trying to be super mega rich, which I feel it's okay, but it's also in a way a form of either seeking validation, either from the public or you proving to yourself something. How do you see those as motivations for getting into entrepreneurship?
I think it's much more important to know who you are and what it is you naturally do in life. I've known you for a while, Elijah. Your business tendency is always to be of service. Yeah. And as is mine. And I often see gaps. I mean, to be honest, in the airline industry, the reason I got into aviation, which is 25 years ago now, was because there was a gap for the tourist market, and we needed to fill that gap. The tourism couldn't grow in this country without better aviation connection. So that's why I got in. It wasn't like I want to run aeroplanes and I want to make lots of money out of aeroplanes. It was like there was a need, and somebody else would see that need and not be touched by it. Why do I love my life coaching? Because there's a need, and I, rather like you, I'm not a production person so much and making things. I'm much more of a service person. So it's very natural for me to move into service in the various businesses that I have been involved in. And I think that's more important. I mean, you've got to love what you're doing. I mean, to get up every day and go and go and run a factory and make widgets would just be so disinterested. It would not spark me at all. But getting up and doing something which is of service to a segment of the community sparks me, because that's my natural state of being. So I think that's important. Money, the desire to make money was actually really never my personal motivator. But if you love what you do and you do it well, finance generally comes from the end of it. And if money is a motivator for you, then actually you'll probably make more money doing what you love doing than for somebody who is doing the same thing that they love to do, but is not that interested in the money. They're going to make less money, and that's where I was.
Okay. and for you, Elijah, what does the right motivation to want to start an enterprise look like for you in retrospect to where you are now?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same. I don't think it's ever changed for me. In anything I do, and this is entrepreneurial or otherwise, it's always about feeling that the thing that I'm doing really matters. Like just being able to participate in something that I really believe in, or that I believe that I can, add tremendous value to, has always been important. But that is not independent of, business logic and business judgment. So I kind of feel like there's always, we each bring to the table our understanding of the world. And if it's myself as a skateboarder, as a hip hop dancer, there are probably things that I'm exposed to on a daily basis, could be just from the YouTube videos that I watch, that I have an understanding of, if you get people on a stage and you sell a certain number of tickets and you get a bunch of all of these companies involved, there's going to be a commercial aspect of which there will be money to pay for all of these things, pay myself, generate a profit. I think that's not even the motivation. That is just like my understanding of the economics of this business that I want to be involved in. And obviously I want a good financial outcome, not because, and this is just personal, not because I would want to be rich, but because I want to do more of, basically my financial motivation was, I want this business to make as much money as possible because I want to do more of this. The good feeling that I feel at Street Culture, I want more people to feel that good feeling. In order for me to reach more people, I need to make more money to, I need more resources, more people, etc. So somebody could have met me and think that this guy really wants to be rich because he really knows how to sell and he really is pushing this business. But it wasn't for just pure financial gain. It wasn't about like Lamborghinis, you know, private jets, but it was more about, I want to see more of this. So I think like the best motivations are the ones, you know, that I can say to some extent are like renewable. Like, you know, I know every day I'm gonna love skateboarding, I'm gonna love graffiti, I'm gonna love art. You know, I'm always gonna love that.
Yeah.
But like with just having a purely financial motive, I don't know how fulfilling having a lot of money is, because if there's one thing I see, the human pursuit of money is endless. And I know people who have money and are not happy. I know people who have money that are happy, but I don't think that as a direct goal is appealing to me.
Is like a fulfilling thing.
Yeah, it doesn't seem fulfilling to me, because I know, like, you know, money follows the law of diminishing returns, that like, you know, you keep on getting money and, you know, it feels good up to a certain point, and then beyond a certain point it doesn't give you any additional happiness. It can even take from your happiness, can make you paranoid, can make you whatever. So like, I think it's okay to have whatever motivation that you want to have to be in business, but I think that you'll know what the right motivation is for you based on, you know, like an inner calling, like something deep within you that makes you feel that, yes, I'm doing the right thing, or the thing for me.
And you know, like, I think from what you said, you can't really tell someone, say this is the right motivation, but at least it has to be sustainable, right? Like, it has to be something that I can wake up the next day and say, you know what, I don't have money, but I think I still want to do this, you know? So now tell me, with all that being said, if you could have a 5-minute chat with the younger version of you that was just getting into this space, what's the one thing you would tell them that you feel would, there are many things, there are many lessons, but what's the one thing you could tell them to start them off on that journey? Not from the perspective of needing a support system, but more like a tool or a framework for how to approach the mindset with which to approach the journey.
I would say that it's really key to set up good administration and good financial control from day one. And know what is happening in your business at a bottom line level, not the top line. Top line is where the ego sits, where how many dollars, kwaches you're turning over, how many sales you've got. But after all your costs, you have your bottom line. And that is that's the line to be following. And in order to understand that, you need to have good administration, good finance, and I think that's really misunderstood. I've seen it so often here, young entrepreneurs saying, I'm a creative, I don't need to look at that. And it's like, no, the business needs it. Not you, the business needs it.
It's not about you.
And in order to make good decisions for your business, you need to know what's happening in the business. And that's where good administration, which leads into good financial structure, good accounting, is really, really important. It's the foundation of a business. You can't run a business without it.
Without administration.
Yeah.
Okay.
And financial understanding, knowing what your financial position is at any time.
That's not something that comes very natural to people that see themselves as entrepreneurs. Usually, and I think knowing that could even mean I don't have to know it. Like, I could outsource to someone else. It still gives me the picture of the business.
You can outsource it all to somebody else, but you need to put that in place.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as we wind down, how do you approach the business life now, the entrepreneurship life? Looking at all these experiences you've had, like, where are you now and how are you thinking about it going forward?
So, and I guess this would be my answer to the previous question. Like, I think how I approach life now would be the advice that, or the framework that I would advise my younger self, and that's always see yourself as a leader. And that can just be not a leader of anyone, but like a leader of yourself, and having a leadership mindset. And I think what that means to me is just take responsibility, like, you know, at all times.
Of yourself?
Yeah. take responsibility of yourself, take responsibility of your situation. Because like, if you think about it, like, the leader of a household has to make, decisions for the household, whether things are good or things are bad. You have to take leadership, you have to be decisive, and you have to take responsibility. And, I think taking responsibility is looking at your situation and, making the best decision in that moment. So like, for myself, I felt that the times where I had the worst experience in my entrepreneurial journey is where I didn't want to take responsibility. Yeah. I didn't want to, have a leadership mindset in my situation. I was waiting for someone else to do something, or I was blaming COVID, I was blaming some external circumstance, and not realizing that, okay, this is where I am. What is the best decision that can be made in this moment, to progress and to move forward? So, that's kind of my mindset these days right now. And, I'm not doing anything entrepreneurial. I think after my first business, I learned that, it didn't work out. It didn't meet my expectations, but there's so much opportunity. There's so much potential that the best thing I can do right now for myself is position myself for the next stage of my journey, like learning about new technology. I spend a lot of time coding. I spend a lot of time just reading about what new tools they are that, people didn't have 10, 15 years ago that are available to me. And, that is how I take leadership. That is how I take responsibility of my situation. So yeah, that's kind of my framework. That's kind of my approach. That's where I am. That's how I approach entrepreneurship. You can say as an abstract concept, and it's just about I see myself as a leader. So I want to lead. I want to be at the forefront of new technologies. I want to be improving myself. I want to put myself in a position where I'm really, confident in myself and my ability and everything that I want to get involved in. I want to make sure that I've done all the work and the preparation that I need to feel confident in whatever role I'm stepping into. So yeah, that's how I approach it.
That's where you are. And Joe, looking at your many experiences, and like you said, obviously for you right now, you're not really like trying to push your career, but where are you and where are you trying to get to in your journey? And what's it like for you as you are coaching these entrepreneurs? Like how are you looking at how you're moving through your journey from here?
Well, I'm in my mid 60s now, so I'm very much at the sort of towards the end of my sort of out there active running businesses.
I disagree. I think you're really out there in your own way.
Yeah.
Business.
No, but what I very much see my role now as, in a way, being the elder and supporting young people in their journeys. And I do have lots of experience. I was always a huge risk taker, so I've had the great highs of success, the great lows of failure. And so I love supporting young people in Zambia through their entrepreneurial journey and their personal journeys, and that's what I love to do. And I just want to spend my time doing what I love to do. Yeah.
Sometimes I wonder how long it would have, because when my business went bust, it took me a while to get out of the rut, paying back the debts and all those things. And I wonder if I hadn't met you, because you gave me so many frameworks on how to navigate that path. I also had good support systems around, like Elijah and them, which I think were very key. I just wonder how long it would have taken me to navigate that path. But it's been a great journey knowing both of you guys, and I think you've both been so instrumental and probably will continue to be. Are you guys working on any exciting projects as we close? Anything exciting you're working on that you'd like to talk about?
I'm working on myself.
That's exciting.
That's the most exciting project that I can say I'm working on, and stay tuned. Yeah, dude. And I think that part of working on myself has been having friends who are entrepreneurial like yourself, that that we can share experiences with. And Joe's my coach, and having a coach like Joe, I would really encourage people to have someone in your life that's maybe not like a family member and not somebody you grew up with, that you can talk to. I think these people are there in the world. Like, if you just go out and tell somebody you do need to talk, or you respect where you feel they are in life, or just respect who they are as a person, and you want their you want their guidance. Yeah, I think it is one of those things on theme that I wish I had known when I was starting a business. Entrepreneurship is a process of people. Employees, customers, investors, just the market, the economy. If you're participating in the economy,
however you cut it, it's people.
It's a people process. So like, I think there's those support systems. Having those people in your life is, I think, a very important ingredient to a fulfilling experience. Whether the business succeeds or not is irrelevant.
I agree.
It's completely irrelevant.
Joe, anything exciting you're working on? Something that's currently giving you a buzz?
Well, doing the podcasting with you for a start. And that's been awesome. Now, at this point, I am just wanting to fill my life with things that fill my heart, that bring me joy, and drop the things that don't bring me joy. So I'm really following my heart right now, and it doesn't look like any business, trust me. No business. I'm still involved.
We're going to try to change that.
I'm still involved in a number of businesses, and they take up quite a lot of my entrepreneurial brain, if you see what I mean. Quite a lot. And I'm involved quite deeply in a couple of charities, NGOs. I'm chair of one, which I founded Project Luangwa, 13 years ago, and I'm still deeply involved in that. So I'm busy, but my focus is very spread. So I have my coaching businesses, but I'm not executive, but particularly one is taking up quite a lot of time. And then my Project Luangwa, which is about education and gender support, and then Elephant Charge, which is about conservation, which is another passion. Nature's a huge passion of mine. It fills my heart. So yeah, working Elephant Charge, and we raise money for conservation in Zambia. So yeah, I have lots of boxes ongoing. I don't need to add any new ones.
Okay. So this has been a great chat. I hope we can do it again. There's so much more we could have delved into that we didn't, but I think someone who's trying to start out on their entrepreneurship journey, they'll find that there are a lot of things that they can pick out from this. The core thing being a support system and a value. But as we close, I want you, Elijah, to give one question for my next guest. I won't tell you who they are or what the podcast will be about, but just let it come to you, and you can do the same, Joe, and then we can sign out.
One question for my next guest,
regardless of who they are and what we're talking about.
What truly brings you joy and happiness in life? I think I always want to know that from anybody.
Okay, Joe?
Well, I was going to ask what it is that you cannot not do.
Even if you tried, you're still going to find yourself doing it.
I can't imagine an Elijah without skateboarding.
Or dancing.
And graffiti and that whole side. What is it that you just cannot not do?
Okay, thanks guys. This has been great.